Those words echoed across the frozen settlement square as Mara Keaton stood alone, her breath forming clouds in the bitter air. The council had spoken. At 28, unmarried, too tall, too loud, too much, she was a burden this struggling frontier town could no longer afford. Then, from the tree line, a figure emerged. Massive, silent, a mountain man with eyes like winter steel. He walked straight to her, and in front of everyone who'd ever rejected her, he said just 4 words. "I'll take her, now. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far Mara's journey travels across this world." The settlement of Coldwater Ridge wasn't much to look at on its best days. On its worst, like today, it was a collection of weathered cabins huddled against the mountain wind, desperate and mean. The kind of place where survival mattered more than kindness, and kindness was a luxury no one could afford. Mara had known this her whole life. She stood in the center of the square, snow crunching under her worn boots, while the council delivered their verdict. 5 men, each one looking anywhere but directly at her. Cowards, all of them. They'd rather face down a grizzly than tell a woman to her face that she wasn't wanted. 2 weeks, Elder Pritchard said again, his voice thin and reedy against the wind. "That's more than fair, Miss Keaton." Fair. The word tasted like ash. Mara's hands curled into fists inside her coat pockets. She was taller than 3 of the 5 men standing in judgment, broader in the shoulders than most women in the settlement, and she'd never learned to make herself smaller. Her mother had tried to teach her, God rest her soul. But it never took. Some people were built to shrink. Mara wasn't one of them. "And if I don't find someone?" Her voice came out steady, despite the rage building behind her ribs. Pritchard shuffled his feet. "Then you'll need to move on. We can't support unmarried women of childbearing age who refuse to contribute to the community's future." Refuse? The word cracked like a whip. "I've worked every job you've thrown at me. I've hauled timber, dressed game, mended more fences than any man here. What exactly am I refusing?" "A husband, Miss Keaton." This from Thomas Webb, younger than Pritchard but twice as sanctimonious. "A family, your natural role, natural role." As if nature had asked him. The small crowd that had gathered, because of course there was a crowd, public humiliation was free entertainment, shifted uncomfortably. Some faces showed pity. Most showed relief that they weren't the ones standing in the center of the square. Mara scanned the group, looking for, what? An ally? She'd run out of those when her mother died 3 years back. Her father had been gone since she was 12, swallowed by the mountains on a hunting trip that went wrong. No siblings, no close friends, not really. Just her, alone, in a town that had decided she was a problem to be solved. "You have 2 weeks, Pritchard said with finality. "Find a husband or find somewhere else to be." The crowd began to disperse, conversations already starting. Speculation about where she'd go, how long she'd last out there alone, whether this was harsh or necessary. Small-town gossip, the kind that wore grooves into your soul. Mara stood there as the square emptied, snow beginning to fall harder. The sky had that heavy gray quality that promised a real storm, not just flurries. The kind of storm that could bury a person. She should move, go back to her cabin, start figuring out what the hell she was going to do. But her legs felt rooted, frozen to this spot where her entire life had just been upended. That's when she saw him. At first she thought it was a trick of the snow, a shadow between the pine trees at the settlement's edge. Then the shadow moved, stepped forward, and became solid. He was massive. Not just tall, though he had to be pushing 6.5 feet, but built. Broad across the chest and shoulders in a way that spoke of years of hard labor, of carrying weight that would break lesser men. He wore a heavy coat made of what looked like bearskin, dark and thick, and his beard was full, dark brown shot through with copper where the light caught it. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. They were gray. Not the soft gray of stone or smoke, but the sharp, pale gray of ice over deep water. And they were looking straight at her. He walked toward her with purpose, his boots leaving deep prints in the snow. The few people still lingering in the square stopped, turned. A stranger was rare enough. A stranger like this was unprecedented. Mara's heart kicked against her ribs, but she held her ground. She'd been taught to fear men like this, mountain men, hermits, The ones who lived beyond civilization's reach. They were dangerous, unpredictable. Or so the stories went. He stopped about 6 feet away, close enough that she could see the scar cutting through his left eyebrow, the way his breath steamed in the cold air. "You're the one they're throwing out." His voice was deep, rougher than gravel, but not unkind. A statement, not a question. Mara lifted her chin. "That's their plan, yeah." He studied her for a long moment, those ice-water eyes taking in everything, her height, her stance, the set of her jaw. She refused to look away, refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her flinch. "You know how to work?" he asked. "Better than most men here." A flicker of something crossed his face. Amusement, maybe. "You scared of mountains?" "Should I be?" "Most people are." He shifted his weight, and she noticed the rifle slung across his back, the knife at his belt. Tools, not threats. At least not threats against her. "I got a proposition." Behind her, Mara heard gasps, whispers starting up again. This was going to be all over town within the hour. "I'm listening," she said. "I need a wife." Blunt. Direct. No poetry to it. "My cabin's a day's walk into the high country. Good land, fresh water, game enough to last through winter if you know what you're doing. I know what I'm doing." Mara's stomach dropped. "You're serious?" "Don't make jokes." He paused, something hard flickering in his expression. "Been alone up there 5 years. It's time I wasn't." "You don't even know me. I know you're strong. I know this town's ready to toss you like trash. I know you got 2 weeks and nowhere to go." He took a step closer, and she smelled pine and wood smoke and something wild, something that had never been tamed. "I'm offering you a choice they won't give you. Take it or don't." "What do you get out of this?" Suspicion sharpened her voice. Men didn't offer things for free, especially not to women they'd just met. A partner. Simple. Final. Someone who pulls their weight. Someone who won't break when things get hard, and things will get hard. Winter up there isn't like winter here. It's mean. It'll kill you if you're weak. "I'm not weak." His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "No, I don't figure you are." "I don't know your name." "Ronan Hale." "Mara Keaton." "I know." Of course he did. Small towns had one export, gossip. The snow was falling harder now, big fat flakes that caught in his beard, in her hair. The settlement was going quiet, battening down for the storm. Soon it would just be the wind and the cold, and her, alone in her cabin, trying to figure out how to survive the next 2 weeks. Or she could say yes to this stranger, this mountain man who'd appeared out of nowhere like something from a fever dream. Why me? The question slipped out before she could stop it. You could have anyone. Ronan's expression shifted, something ancient and tired moving behind his eyes. Could I? You think any woman in there, he jerked his chin toward the settlement, would follow me into the mountains without complaint? Without trying to change me, civilize me, make me into something I'm not? You think I won't? I think you don't have the luxury of trying. Brutal honesty. And I think you're the kind of woman who'd rather be respected than coddled. Am I wrong? No, he wasn't wrong. Mara looked back at Coldwater Ridge, at the cabins with their shuttered windows, the people who'd watched her stand trial in the square and done nothing. The place that had raised her and was now discarding her like spoiled meat. What did she owe them? What did she owe this life? If I come with you, she said slowly, I'm not going to be meek. I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not just to keep peace. Good. I don't want meek. Ronan's voice held an edge of approval. I want capable. I want someone who will stand when things go to hell, because they will. Every winter, they do. And if it doesn't work, she had to ask, had to know. If we get up there and realize this was a mistake, then you leave in spring and I don't stop you. He held her gaze. But you give it a real try first, through the winter. That's the deal. A real try, through winter. It was insane. She barely knew this man. He could be dangerous, cruel, any number of things worse than exile. But standing here in the square, snow gathering on her shoulders, the settlement doors closing against her. What choice did she really have? When do we leave? Mara asked. Something changed in Ronan's face. Relief, maybe. Or respect. Dawn. Tomorrow. Bring what you can carry. Everything else stays. I don't have much. Don't need much. Just yourself. He turned to go, then stopped, looked back. For what it's worth, Mara Keaton, they're fools for letting you go. Then he walked away, disappearing back into the tree line as suddenly as he'd appeared, leaving her alone in the falling snow with a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff. That night, Mara didn't sleep. She packed by candlelight, her few possessions spread across the cabin's single table. Clothes, mostly, heavy wool, flannel, things meant for hard winters. Her mother's shawl, one of the few soft things she owned, a hunting knife her father had given her before he'd vanished, a small tin of tea, a luxury she'd rationed for months. Everything else, the furniture, the dishes, the bed frame, belonged to the settlement. She'd only been borrowing it, apparently. Another thing they'd failed to mention when they'd let her move in after her mother died. She should feel something, shouldn't she? Fear? Regret? But all she felt was a strange, hollow calm, like she'd already left this place in every way that mattered. Somewhere around midnight, there was a knock. Mara opened the door to find Sarah Mills, one of the few women close to her age. They'd never been friends. Sarah had married at 19 and had 3 children by 25, but they'd worked together on occasion, harvesting, sewing, the endless tasks that kept a settlement alive. I heard, Sarah said quietly. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her hands chapped and raw. About tomorrow. Everyone heard. Is it true? You're going with him? Mara stepped back, let her in. The cabin was already cold, the fire dying. No point feeding it when she'd be gone in hours. Sarah looked around, taking in the packed bag, the emptiness. You really think this is better? Better than what? Begging some man here to marry me out of pity? Mara's laugh was sharp. Better than starving alone in some other town that doesn't want me either? He could be dangerous. So could staying. Sarah's hands twisted together. I don't understand you, Mara. I never have. You could have made this easier on yourself. You could have been smaller, quieter, more convenient. Mara shook her head. I tried, Sarah. For years I tried. It didn't take. And now you're running off with a stranger into the mountains. I'm making a choice. That's more than this place ever gave me. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of different lives, different choices hanging between them. I hope it works, Sarah said finally, soft. I really do. After she left, Mara sat in the dark and let herself imagine it. The cabin Ronan had mentioned, the mountains, a life where her strength wasn't a flaw but a necessity, where being too much might be exactly enough. It felt like hoping. She'd almost forgotten what that was like. Dawn came cold and clear. Mara was ready, her pack cinched tight, her mother's shawl wrapped around her shoulders. She stood outside her cabin, the cabin, not hers, never really hers, and watched the settlement wake up. Ronan appeared from the trees right on time, moving like he was part of the forest itself. He took one look at her pack, nodded approval. Travel light? Everything I need. Good. They didn't say goodbye to anyone. There was no one to say goodbye to. The settlement watched from windows as they walked toward the tree line, whispers following them like ghosts. Just before the forest swallowed them, Mara turned back for one last look. Coldwater Ridge sat in its valley, small and mean and afraid of everything beyond its borders. A place that chose safety over possibility, that would rather exile a woman than expand its definition of what a woman could be. You good? Ronan's voice, quiet beside her. Mara faced forward toward the mountains rising in the distance, white-capped and massive and unknown. Yeah, she said. I'm good. And they walked into the wilderness together. The first day was brutal. Ronan set a pace that would have broken most people, steady, relentless, eating up miles without pause. But Mara had spent her life doing hard work, and she matched him step for step, breath for breath. They barely spoke. Ronan led, following trails only he could see, moving through the forest with an ease that spoke of years of practice. Mara followed, watching, learning, the way he avoided certain paths, the signs he read in broken branches and disturbed snow. Around midday, he stopped at a frozen stream. "Drink," he said, kneeling to break through the ice. "We won't stop again until dark." Mara knelt beside him, the cold water shocking against her hands. She cupped it, drank, felt it burn all the way down. "You doing all right?" Ronan asked, not looking at her. "Fine." "Don't lie. Not up here. If something's wrong, you say so." She glanced at him. His face was hard, unreadable, but there was something in his voice. Concern, maybe. Or just practicality. He needed her alive. "I'm fine," she said again, firmer. "I can keep going." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, then." They kept going. Bob. By the time they made camp, Mara's legs were screaming, but she didn't show it. Helped Ronan clear snow, gather firewood, set up the small tent he'd brought. Worked until her hands ached and her breath came in gasps. When the fire was going and they were sitting on either side of it, darkness pressing in from all directions, Ronan pulled out dried meat and hard bread, handed half to her without ceremony. "We'll reach the cabin tomorrow evening," he said, tearing into his portion. "If the weather holds." Mara ate slowly, savoring the salt, the texture. "How far up are we?" "Few thousand feet above Coldwater. We'll climb higher tomorrow." The wind picked up, rattling through the pines. Somewhere in the distance, something howled. Wolf, maybe, or something worse. Mara didn't flinch. Ronan noticed. "You're not scared." "Should I be?" "Most people would be." "I'm not most people." She looked at him across the fire. "Why did you really come to the settlement? You could have found a wife anywhere." He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I was passing through. Heard them talking in the trading post about the unmarried women, the ones they were trying to match off. Heard your name. Heard how they talked about you. How's that?" "Like you were a problem. Like your strength was a curse instead of a gift." His jaw tightened. "Reminded me of someone." "Who?" "My sister." The words came out rough. "She was like you, tall, strong, didn't fit the mold. Our town tried to break her, make her into something acceptable. She didn't survive it." The fire crackled. Mara's throat felt tight. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be sorry. Just be alive. Be strong. That's enough." They sat in silence after that, the weight of their different losses hanging in the cold air. Eventually, Ronan stood, checked the fire, looked out into the darkness. "Get some sleep," he said. "Tomorrow's harder." Mara crawled into the tent, wrapped herself in her blankets, and listened to the mountain sounds. Wind, trees, the occasional crack of ice. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. The second day was harder. The terrain turned steep, rocky, treacherous with ice. Ronan led them up switchbacks and narrow paths, places where one wrong step meant a long fall. Mara's pack felt like it was full of stones, her breath coming in ragged gasps as the altitude kicked in, but she didn't complain. Didn't ask to stop. Ronan glanced back occasionally, checking on her, and each time she met his eyes with determination. She'd said she could do this. She'd meant it. Around noon, they crested a ridge and the world opened up. Mountains stretched in every direction, vast and white and impossibly beautiful. Peaks that looked like they could scrape the sky. Valleys so deep they disappeared into shadow. It was the kind of landscape that made you feel small, made you understand exactly how insignificant human concerns were in the face of something this ancient. "Jesus," Mara breathed. Ronan stood beside her, looking out at the view like he'd seen it 1,000 times and it still mattered. "This is my backyard. It's incredible. It's unforgiving." He turned to her. "You need to understand that, Mara. Up here, nature doesn't care about your feelings, your plans, your hopes. It'll kill you without malice just because you made one mistake. You have to respect that." "I do." "Do you?" His eyes were hard. "Because once we get to the cabin, there's no running back to civilization when things get hard. We're locked in until spring. Just us, the mountain, and whatever winter throws at us." Mara looked out at the impossible landscape, at the beauty and danger wrapped together so tight you couldn't separate them. "I understand," she said, "and I'm still here." Something shifted in his expression. Approval, maybe? Or the beginning of trust. "Come on," he said. "Few more hours." The cabin appeared just as the sun started to set. It sat in a clearing, backed against a cliff face for protection, surrounded by pines. Solid, built from thick logs that looked like they'd stand for decades. Smoke curled from the chimney. Ronan had left the fire banked before he'd gone to the settlement. It was small, functional, nothing fancy. But to Mara, coming off 2 days of hard travel, it looked like paradise. Home, Ronan said simply. They approached together, and he pushed open the door. Inside was a single large room, sleeping area in one corner with a massive bed piled with furs, a kitchen area with a wood stove and rough shelves, a table and 2 chairs near the fireplace. Everything built by hand, everything solid. Mara set her pack down, turned in a slow circle. It smelled like wood smoke and pine and something indefinably male. Clean, but lived in. A space that had been occupied, used, maintained. "It's not much," Ronan said, watching her. "It's more than I had." He moved to the fireplace, started building up the fire. "You take the bed tonight. I'll sleep on the floor." "That doesn't seem fair." "Bed's big enough for 2, but I figure we should ease into that." He glanced at her, matter of fact. "We're married in name, Mara, but I'm not going to push anything you're not ready for. Clear?" She hadn't expected that. Hadn't expected consideration, boundaries, respect. "Clear," she said quietly. "Good. Now help me unpack. We've got supplies to sort and inventory to check. Winter's coming hard, and we need to be ready." And just like that, they fell into a rhythm. Working together, moving around each other in the small space, finding a balance. It wasn't comfortable yet, wasn't easy, but it was something. That night, Mara lay in the massive bed wrapped in furs and listened to Ronan's steady breathing from his bedroll by the fire. Outside, wind howled through the pines. Inside, warmth held. She'd left everything behind for this, a cabin in the mountains, a stranger who'd offered her a choice when no one else would. It wasn't love, it wasn't even friendship yet. But it was a chance, and Mara Keaton had never walked away from those. She closed her eyes and let sleep take her, the mountain standing guard outside, vast and unforgiving and exactly where she needed to be. Mara woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of an axe biting wood. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed was too soft, too warm, the ceiling too close. Then memory rushed back, the settlement, the ultimatum, Ronan emerging from the trees like something out of a story she'd stopped believing in. She sat up, joints protesting. 2 days of hard travel had left their mark. Her shoulders ached, her legs felt like someone had beaten them with clubs, and her feet, she didn't even want to look at her feet. But she was alive, and she was here. The cabin was empty, fire burning low in the hearth. Through the window, she could see Ronan outside, splitting logs with mechanical precision. Each swing perfectly placed, perfectly timed. He'd been at it for a while, judging by the pile. Mara pushed off the furs, stood, winced. Her clothes from yesterday were filthy, sweat-stained from the climb. She dug through her pack, found clean wool and flannel, changed quickly. The cabin was warm enough, but outside would be bitter. She found the coffee pot on the stove, still hot, poured herself a cup in a tin mug that had probably seen better days, and stood at the window watching Ronan work. He'd taken off his coat despite the cold, was working in just a shirt and vest. She could see the power in his shoulders, the way his body moved. Efficient, practiced, no wasted motion. This wasn't a man who worked out for appearance. This was someone who'd spent years surviving on strength alone. The axe came down, split a log clean through. Ronan bent, tossed the pieces onto the pile, set up another round. Again. Building their winter stockpile one swing at a time. Mara drank her coffee and tried to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do now. Eventually, Ronan noticed her in the window. He straightened, wiped sweat from his forehead despite the cold, and headed for the cabin. When he came through the door, bringing a rush of frigid air with him, his eyes went to her immediately. "You're up. Couldn't sleep through all that chopping. Figured you'd be dead to the world after yesterday." He moved to the stove, poured his own coffee. "You handled the climb better than I expected." "What did you expect?" He shrugged. "Most people from the settlements can't hack it up here. Too soft, too used to easy." "I've never been accused of being easy." That almost smile flickered across his face again. "No, I don't imagine you have." He sat at the table, gestured for her to join him. Mara did, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. The silence between them wasn't quite comfortable yet, but it wasn't hostile either. Just two people trying to figure out how to exist in the same space. "So what happens now?" Mara asked. "Now we work." Ronan's voice was matter-of-fact. "Winter's coming fast and we're not ready. Wood needs splitting and stacking. Meat needs smoking. I've got snare lines to check, and the root cellar needs reinforcing. You hunt?" "Some. My father taught me before he died." "Good. You'll need to get better. Up here, if you can't hunt, you starve." He drained his coffee. "I'll take you out tomorrow. See what you know. Teach you what you don't." Mara nodded slowly. This was the deal. Work, survive, pull her weight. No different from what she'd been doing at Coldwater, except here, her effort actually mattered. "What do you need me to do today?" Ronan stood, grabbed his coat. "Get your bearings. Learn the cabin, where everything is. There's venison in the cold box. Cook us something for midday. This afternoon, I'll show you the property lines, where not to go." "Why wouldn't I go somewhere?" His expression went hard. "Because there are places on this mountain that'll kill you. Cliffs that look stable but aren't. Ice caves that collapse. Bear dens. You need to know where the danger is. All right?" He paused at the door, looked back. "And Mara, don't go wandering off alone. Not yet. Not until you know this place." It wasn't a request. It was a rule, spoken with the weight of experience behind it. "Understood," she said. He nodded and went back outside, back to his endless wood splitting. Mara sat at the table for a long moment, then stood and started exploring her new home. The cabin was simple but well built. Everything had a place, everything served a purpose. The kitchen area held basic supplies: flour, salt, sugar, coffee, dried beans. The shelves were organized with military precision. A man who lived alone learned to be tidy or lost his mind. The sleeping area was less sparse. The bed was massive, clearly built by hand, piled with furs from animals Mara couldn't identify. Bear, maybe. Wolf. Deer hide. A patchwork of kills that represented years of survival. Along one wall was a gun rack. 3 rifles, 2 shotguns, all meticulously maintained. Beside it, a hunting knife collection that ranged from practical to terrifying. Tools of the trade for a man who lived beyond civilization's reach. Mara moved to the window, looked out at the clearing. Beyond the cabin, the forest pressed in, dark and deep. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks lost in low clouds. It was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with gentleness. Beautiful like a blade was beautiful, sharp, dangerous, unforgiving. This was home now, for better or worse. She found the venison in the cold box built into the north wall where the temperature stayed just above freezing. The meat was fresh, well trimmed. Mara had dressed enough deer to know quality butchering when she saw it. By midday, she'd made a stew. Venison, root vegetables from the stores, herbs she'd found hanging dried near the stove. Simple, hearty. The kind of food that stuck to your ribs and kept you going through hard work. Ronan came in when she called, bringing another armload of wood. He stacked it near the fireplace, then sat at the table without ceremony. "Smells good." Mara ladled out 2 bowls, set one in front of him. They ate in silence for a while, the only sounds the scrape of spoons against tin and the crackle of the fire. "You can cook," Ronan said finally. "You sound surprised. Wasn't sure what skills you'd have." Mara set down her spoon. "I can cook, clean, sew, hunt, fish, dress game, chop wood, mend fences, shoe a horse, birth a calf, and shoot straight enough to hit what I'm aiming at most days. Anything else you want to test me on?" He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. "No, that'll do." They finished eating, and Ronan pushed back from the table. "Get your coat. I'll show you the property." Outside, the cold hit like a fist. Mara pulled her mother's shawl tighter and followed Ronan into the trees. He moved through the forest like he was reading a language only he could see, pointing out landmarks, trails, dangerous spots. A ravine hidden under snow that could swallow a person whole. A frozen stream that looked solid but would crack under weight. The bear den about a quarter-mile north. "Give it wide berth until spring," Ronan said. "Mama bear's in there with cubs. She'll tear you apart if you get close." Mara memorized everything, filing it away. Up here, knowledge was survival. They walked for over an hour, looping through the property in a wide circle. Ronan showed her his snare lines, his hunting stands, the places where game trails crossed, taught her to read tracks in the snow: deer, elk, rabbit, wolf. Wolves are the real danger, he said, crouched beside a set of prints. Bears you can usually avoid. Mountain lions are rare this high, but wolves hunt in packs, and they're smart. They'll test you, see if you're weak. Show fear, and they'll take you down. How do I not show fear? You make yourself bigger. You make noise. You never run. He stood, brushed snow from his hands. And if it comes down to it, you fight like hell and pray you're meaner than they are. They kept walking. The sun was starting to dip toward the western peaks, painting the snow gold and pink. It would be dark soon, and dark came fast this high up. Why here? Mara asked suddenly. Why this mountain? Why alone? Ronan didn't answer right away. They'd reached a high point, looking out over the valley. Below, more forest, more mountains, more wilderness than a person could cross in a lifetime. After my sister died, he said quietly, I couldn't stay. Couldn't be around people who thought the way she was, the way we were, was wrong. Came up here to get away from all of it. You've been alone for 5 years. Yeah. That's a long time. It is. He turned to look at her. Got tired of my own company. Started thinking maybe I could find someone who understood. Someone who wouldn't try to change me. And then I heard about you. Mara's chest felt tight. I'm not sure I'm what you're looking for. You're here, aren't you? You walked into the mountains without hesitation. Most people wouldn't. Most people had other options. Maybe. His eyes held hers. Or maybe most people are too scared to take the hard road even when it's the right one. They stood there as the light faded, two people trying to figure out if they could make something work that had no business working at all. We should head back, Ronan said finally. Temperature drops fast after sunset. The walk back was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. By the time they reached the cabin, full dark had fallen, and the temperature had plummeted. Inside, the fire had burned low. Ronan built it back up while Mara lit the oil lamps. Warm light filled the space, pushing back the darkness. Outside, wind picked up, rattling the shutters. Storm's coming, Ronan said, reading something in the wind that Mara couldn't hear yet. Big one. We'll be snowed in for a few days. What do we do? We wait it out. He moved to the shelves, started pulling down supplies. Make sure we have everything we need close. Food, water, firewood. Once it hits, we don't go outside unless it's life or death. They spent the next hour preparing, bringing in more wood, filling water containers, organizing food supplies, working together with the efficiency of people who understood what was at stake. The storm hit around midnight. Mara had been asleep, but the sound woke her. Wind screaming like something alive, snow hammering the walls. The cabin shook, timbers groaning under the assault. She sat up, heart pounding. Across the room, Ronan was already awake, sitting by the fire. It's all right, he said, calm in the chaos. Cabin's solid. It'll hold. You sure about that? Built it myself. Used logs thick as my waist. Drove the foundations deep. This isn't my first storm. Mara got up, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, and moved to sit by the fire. The heat felt good against her skin. Outside the storm raged, but inside they had light and warmth. Can't sleep? Ronan asked. Hard to sleep through that. You get used to it. Mountain storms are loud, but they pass. They sat in silence for a while, watching the fire dance. Mara studied him in the flickering light, the hard lines of his face, the scars she was starting to notice, the way he held himself like someone always ready for trouble. Can I ask you something? She said. Yeah. That scar through your eyebrow, how'd you get it? His hand went to it automatically, a gesture so familiar it was unconscious. Grizzly, 3 years back, got between her and her cubs without realizing. She came at me fast, caught me across the face before I could bring the rifle up. How'd you survive? Shot her point blank, fell on top of me, took me 2 hours to crawl out from under her. His voice was flat, factual. Bled like hell, but the cold probably saved my life. Slowed the bleeding enough for me to cauterize it. Mara's stomach turned. You cauterized your own face? Didn't have much choice. Die from blood loss or do something about it. That's insane. That's survival. He looked at her. Up here, you do what you have to. No doctors, no help, just you and your will to keep breathing. The storm howled. Inside, the fire crackled. "You're not what I expected," Mara said quietly. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone harder, maybe. Crueler. The story's about mountain men. They're not kind." Ronan's expression darkened. "I'm not kind, Mara. Don't mistake survival for softness. I do what needs doing, and sometimes that's brutal, but I'm not cruel for the sake of it. There's a difference." "Yeah, there is." He stood, added another log to the fire. "You should sleep. Storm's going to last through tomorrow, probably into the next day. We'll need to conserve energy." Mara didn't argue. She went back to the bed, burrowed into the furs, and listened to the storm try to tear the world apart. Somewhere in the chaos, she fell asleep, lulled by the strange comfort of knowing someone else was keeping watch. The storm lasted 3 days. 3 days of wind that never stopped. Snow that piled up past the windows, cold so intense that ice formed on the inside of the walls. 3 days of being trapped in a small space with a man she barely knew, learning to navigate proximity and silence. They fell into a rhythm out of necessity. Ronan handled the fire, kept it burning constantly, fed it with wood from the stack he'd built inside. Mara cooked, simple meals that stretched their supplies, that filled stomachs without depleting their stores too fast. They talked sometimes. Short conversations about practical things, how to read weather, how to preserve meat, the best way to track game. Other times they didn't talk at all, just existed in the same space, comfortable enough with silence. On the second day, Ronan started teaching her to maintain the rifles. "You said you can shoot," he said, laying out the weapons on the table. "But can you keep a gun working in conditions like this?" Mara admitted she couldn't. Her father had taught her to fire, but maintenance had been his job. "Then you learn." Ronan's hands moved with practiced ease, disassembling the rifle, showing her each piece, explaining its purpose. "Gun's only as good as its upkeep. Neglect it, and it'll fail when you need it most." She watched, memorized, tried it herself. Her fingers were clumsy at first, but Ronan was patient, correcting her grip, showing her again when she fumbled. "Good," he said when she reassembled it correctly. Again. They spent hours on it, until Mara could break down and rebuild a rifle without thinking, until her hands knew the weight and feel of every component. "Why does this matter so much?" she asked during a break. "Because one day your life might depend on it." His voice was serious. "Up here, you can't rely on anyone else. You have to be able to save yourself." The words hung in the air between them. Mara thought about Coldwater Ridge, about all the ways she'd been made to feel like she needed saving, like her independence was a flaw. "I like that," she said quietly, "being able to save myself." Ronan nodded. "Thought you might." On the third day, the storm finally broke. They woke to silence, the kind of profound quiet that only comes after days of chaos. Ronan was up first, moving to the door, forcing it open against the snowdrift that had piled against it. Light poured in, blinding after 3 days of dimness. Mara shielded her eyes, followed him outside. The world had been transformed. Snow covered everything, 3 feet deep in places, sculpted into fantastic shapes by the wind. The trees bent under the weight, branches heavy with ice. The sky was impossibly blue, the kind of blue that hurt to look at. "Beautiful," Mara breathed. "Deadly," Ronan corrected. "All this snow means avalanche danger, and we need to dig out before the next storm comes." They spent the rest of the day shoveling, clearing paths to the woodpile, to the cold storage, making sure they could move around the property. Hard, back-breaking work that left Mara gasping in the thin air. But Ronan worked beside her, not ahead of her. Matched her pace, took breaks when she did. Treated her like a partner, not a burden. That night, exhausted and sore, they sat by the fire again. Mara had made something close to bread from their dwindling flour supply, and they ate it with the last of the venison stew. "Tomorrow, we hunt," Ronan said. "Supplies are getting low, and we need fresh meat." "I'm ready." He looked at her across the fire, something almost like approval in his eyes. "Yeah, I think you are." The next morning, they headed out before dawn. Ronan led her to one of his hunting stands, a platform built high in an ancient pine overlooking a game trail. They climbed in silence, settled into the cramped space, and waited. Hunting was mostly waiting. Mara had learned that from her father. The patience to sit still, to let the forest forget you were there, to become part of the landscape. The sun rose slowly, painting the snow gold. Mara's breath steamed in the cold. Beside her, Ronan was absolutely still, his rifle ready, his eyes scanning the trail below. An hour passed. Then another. Mara's legs cramped. Her fingers went numb despite her gloves. But she didn't move, didn't complain. This was the test. Could she handle the reality of mountain life, not just the idea of it? Then Ronan's hand touched her arm, gentle but firm. She followed his gaze. A buck, massive and magnificent, stepped onto the trail. His breath steamed in the cold air, antlers like a crown against the white landscape. Ronan moved with agonizing slowness, bringing his rifle up, took aim, breathed. The shot cracked across the morning, echoing off the mountains. The buck dropped. Clean kill. No suffering. Ronan had hit him perfect. Heart shot. Instant death. They climbed down, approached the kill. Ronan knelt, placed a hand on the animal's flank, spoke words too quiet for Mara to hear. Then he looked up at her. You know how to dress a kill this size? My father and I got a buck once. I helped. Then help now. They worked together, Ronan guiding her through the process with patience she hadn't expected. It was brutal work, bloody, exhausting, precise, but necessary. This animal would feed them through the winter, and wasting any of it would be an insult to its death. By the time they were done, the sun was high overhead. They'd quartered the meat, wrapped it in canvas, prepared it for the trek back. You did good, Ronan said, wiping blood from his hands with snow. Mara looked at him, at the kill, at her own bloody hands. Thank you for teaching me. You're learning fast, faster than I expected. They hauled the meat back to the cabin, strung it up in the cold storage, started the process of smoking what they couldn't keep fresh. It took the rest of the day and into the evening, but when they were done, they had enough meat to last weeks. That night, cooking fresh venison over the fire, Mara realized something had shifted. She and Ronan had fallen into a partnership, rough around the edges, still figuring itself out, but real. Can I ask you something? She said, breaking the comfortable silence. You keep asking permission, just ask. Why haven't you? She paused, searching for the right words. We've been here over a week. You haven't pushed, haven't tried anything. Most men would have. Ronan set down his plate, looked at her directly. Most men are idiots. You came up here because you had no choice, Mara. I'm not going to take advantage of that. So what? We just don't? I didn't say that. His voice was careful. I said I'm not pushing. If something happens, it happens because we both want it, not because I decided it was time. Mara's chest felt strange, tight and warm at the same time. That's different. Yeah, well, I'm not most men. They finished eating in silence, but it felt different now. Charged with possibility instead of just coexistence. Later, as Mara climbed into bed, Ronan spoke from his bedroll by the fire. The bed's big enough for two if you're tired of me taking up floor space. Mara's heart kicked. You sure? I'm sure, but only if you want. No pressure. She thought about it, sharing space, sharing warmth, the intimacy of sleep even without anything else. It should have felt wrong, too fast. But up here, normal rules didn't apply. All right, she said quietly. Ronan stood, gathered his blankets, and climbed into the other side of the massive bed. They lay there, a careful distance between them, both aware of the other's presence. Good night, Mara. Good night. The fire crackled. Outside, the mountain wind sang its endless song. And for the first time since her mother died, Mara didn't feel alone in the dark. The weeks blurred together after that. Work, always work. Checking snare lines, smoking meat, reinforcing the cabin against the worsening weather. Ronan taught her everything. How to track, how to read the sky, how to move through snow without leaving obvious trails, how to survive in a place that wanted you dead. And slowly, carefully, they learned each other. Ronan's morning routine, up before dawn, coffee first, then check the perimeter. His habit of talking to himself when he thought she was asleep, working through problems out loud. The way his hands were gentle with injured animals, brutal with threats, and somewhere in between with her. Mara's own patterns emerged too. She was quietest in the morning, sharpest after midday. She sang sometimes while cooking old songs her mother had taught her. She had nightmares about the settlement, about exile, and woke gasping. The first time it happened, Ronan was there instantly, hand on her shoulder. "You're safe. You're here. They can't touch you." Simple words, but they mattered. They still slept on opposite sides of the bed, careful not to cross that invisible line. But some nights, Mara woke to find they drifted closer in sleep, his warmth against her back, her hand near his. Neither of them mentioned it in the morning. One evening, about 6 weeks in, Mara realized she'd missed her monthly bleeding. She sat very still, counting back days, trying to remember. The stress of exile could have delayed it, the altitude, the change in diet, all rational explanations. But deep in her gut, she knew. Ronan noticed her distraction over dinner. "Something wrong?" "I'm late," she said bluntly. No point dancing around it. He went very still. "How late?" 3 weeks, maybe more. I haven't been tracking carefully." They stared at each other across the table. This changed everything. This made them bound in a way that had nothing to do with choice or convenience. "How do you feel about that?" Ronan asked carefully. Mara searched inside herself for the answer. Fear? Yes. But also something else, but something that felt almost like hope. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "Ask me in a few months." A smile tugged at his mouth. "Fair enough." That night, the invisible line in the bed disappeared. Ronan pulled her close, his hand resting on her stomach where nothing showed yet, but everything had changed. "We'll figure it out," he murmured into her hair, "whatever comes." And Mara, for the first time in her life, believed that maybe they would. The changes came slowly at first, then all at once. Mara's body began announcing the pregnancy in ways that couldn't be ignored. Morning sickness hit hard around week 8, sending her stumbling outside to retch in the snow while Ronan held her hair back and said nothing. Her breasts ached constantly, her sense of smell became weapon-grade sensitive, and exhaustion dragged at her like chains. But her appetite, when she could keep food down, became ferocious. "You're eating like a bear preparing for hibernation," Ronan observed one evening, watching her demolish her third helping of venison stew. "I'm growing a person. People require resources." Mara didn't slow down. "You have a problem with it?" "Not even a little." He pushed the pot closer to her. "Eat as much as you need." The pregnancy made her mean sometimes, sharp-edged in ways she hadn't been before. Ronan took it in stride, seemed to understand that her body was doing something massive, and her emotions were just trying to keep up. 3 months in, her stomach started to curve outward. Nothing dramatic yet, but enough that her clothes didn't fit right. Ronan noticed her struggling with her pants one morning and disappeared into the back corner of the cabin. He returned with a bundle of soft leather. "My sister's," he said quietly. "She was pregnant when she died. Never got to wear these, but they're made for a woman who's carrying. They'll fit better than what you've got." Mara took the clothes carefully, feeling the weight of that offering. "Thank you." She'd want them used, want them to matter. The leather pants fit perfectly, soft and flexible, with clever lacing that would expand as she did. Mara wore them and thought about the sister she'd never meet, the woman Ronan had loved enough to leave civilization behind. Winter deepened. The snow piled higher, the temperatures dropped lower, and the isolation became absolute. They were cut off from the world completely now, just the two of them and the mountain and the life growing between them. Ronan started building a cradle. He worked on it in the evenings by firelight, his big hands surprisingly delicate as he carved and shaped the wood. Didn't ask permission, didn't make a big announcement, just started building, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You're good at that," Mara said one night, watching him work. "Built furniture for my sister. She liked things made by hand, not bought." His knife moved steadily along the wood grain. Said it meant more when someone put their own effort into it. She was right. He glanced up at her, something soft in his expression. "She would have liked you." "You think?" "Yeah. She didn't have patience for people who pretended to be something they weren't. You're honest, even when it costs you. She'd have respected that." The cradle took shape slowly, solid construction, smooth edges, nothing that could harm a baby's soft skin. Ronan carved animals into the headboard, mountain creatures watching over where their child would sleep. Bear, wolf, elk, eagle, protectors and survivors, everyone. Mara's hands went to her growing belly, feeling the first flutters of movement inside. Real now, undeniably real. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Ronan set down his knife. Of what? All of it. Birth, raising a child up here, not being good enough. Her throat felt tight. My mother died when I was young enough to need her. What if I don't know how to do this? Then we figure it out together. He moved to sit beside her, took her hand. You think I know what I'm doing? I've never been a father, never thought I would be. But we're here now, and we'll handle it the same way we handle everything else, one day at a time. What if something goes wrong during the birth? There's no doctor, no midwife, no one who knows. I delivered calves, foals, even helped with a few human births back before I came up here. His voice was steady, grounding. It's not the same, I know. But I won't let you face it alone. And you're strong, Mara. Stronger than you know. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that strength would be enough. Outside, wind hammered the cabin. Inside, the fire crackled and the half-finished cradle sat waiting, and Ronan's hand was warm around hers. We'll be all right, he said. Not a question, a decision. 4 months in, the baby started kicking hard enough for Ronan to feel it. They were lying in bed, her back against his chest, his hand resting on her belly. When the kick came, strong and insistent, he went completely still. Was that? Yeah, Mara laughed despite herself. That's your child saying hello. Another kick, then another. The baby was active tonight, doing acrobatics in the limited space available. Strong, Ronan murmured, awe in his voice. Feels like they're trying to punch their way out already. Tell them to wait a few more months. I'm not ready yet. His arm tightened around her, protective. You will be. When the time comes, you'll be ready. Mara closed her eyes, let herself sink into the warmth and safety of this moment. 4 months ago, she'd been standing in Coldwater Ridge's square, facing exile. Now she was here, carrying a child, held by a man who'd given her a choice when no one else would. Life was strange. Brutal and beautiful and strange. The peace lasted 3 more weeks. Mara woke one morning to Ronan standing at the window, every muscle in his body tight with tension. She sat up, immediately alert. What is it? Tracks. His voice was flat. Fresh. Human. 3, maybe 4 men. Her stomach dropped. How close? Close enough that they'll find us by midday if they're tracking properly. He turned from the window, and his face was hard, dangerous. Get dressed. Warm clothes, layers. We might need to move fast. Mara's hand shook as she pulled on the leather pants, a thick wool sweater, her coat. Who are they? Don't know yet. Could be trappers passing through. Could be trouble. He was already loading rifles, checking ammunition, moving with the cold efficiency of someone preparing for war. Either way, we prepare for the worst. The settlement, Mara said suddenly, certainty hitting her like ice water. They sent people after me. Ronan stopped, looked at her. Why would they do that? Because I was supposed to leave, disappear, die quietly somewhere so they could forget about me. Her voice shook with rage. But if word got back that I'm alive, that I'm married, that changes things, makes them look bad. Small-town reputation is everything, Ronan. They can't let me be proof that they threw someone out to die. So they send men to finish the job. His jaw clenched. Cowards. All of them. He handed her a rifle, then a pistol. You remember everything I taught you? Yes. Good. Because if this goes bad, I need you to fight. Not freeze, not hesitate. Fight like your life depends on it, because it does. Mara checked the rifle, made sure it was loaded properly, tried to calm her racing heart. She'd known safety was temporary, known that the past had a way of finding you, no matter how far you ran. But she'd hoped for more time. The morning dragged on. They waited, weapons ready, watching the tree line. The tracks Ronan had spotted came from the south, from the direction of Coldwater Ridge. That couldn't be coincidence. Around noon, figures appeared through the trees. 4 men, heavily armed, moving with the awkward caution of people who didn't belong in the wilderness. Mara recognized 2 of them immediately, Thomas Webb from the council and Marcus Hill, the settlement's self-appointed enforcer. Her hands tightened on the rifle. Ronan's voice was low, controlled. Stay behind me. Don't show yourself unless you have to. The men approached the cabin slowly, spreading out. Smart tactics, making themselves harder to target. Thomas called out, his voice carrying across the snow. Mara Keaton, we know you're in there. Ronan stepped out onto the porch, rifle held loose but ready. This is private property. Turn around. Thomas stopped, clearly not expecting a man like Ronan. We're not here for trouble. We're here for Mara. She's not going anywhere. That's not your decision. Marcus moved forward, hand on his pistol. She violated the settlement's terms. She was supposed to leave the territory, not shack up with some hermit. I offered her marriage. She accepted. That satisfies your terms. Ronan's voice was ice. Now get off my land. We need to hear that from her. Thomas tried to look around Ronan, searching for Mara. We need proof this isn't coercion. Inside the cabin, Mara made her decision. She stepped out onto the porch, standing beside Ronan. Let them see her. Let them see what they'd thrown away. The looks on their faces when they saw her belly, shock, disgust, calculation, made her want to shoot them where they stood. I'm here by choice, she said clearly. I'm married, I'm pregnant, and I'm staying. You have no claim on me. Thomas's expression hardened. The council won't see it that way. The council can go to hell. I don't answer to them anymore. You owe the settlement, Mara. We raised you, fed you, gave you a home. You threw me out. Her voice cracked across the clearing. You gave me 2 weeks to find a husband or face exile. I found one. I met your terms. What I do now is none of your business. Marcus stepped forward, aggressive. We can't let you stay up here. Can't let you make the settlement look bad by surviving when you were supposed to fail. There it was. The truth, ugly and exposed. Ronan's rifle came up, not quite aimed, but close. You want to rephrase that? Because it sounded like you just admitted you came here to kill her. We came to bring her back. What happens after is the council's decision. But Marcus's hand was on his gun now, and the other two men were spreading out wider, flanking. This was going to go bad. Mara could feel it building, pressure in the air, like before a lightning strike. Last chance, Ronan said quietly. Leave now, and we forget this happened. Stay, and it gets ugly. Thomas laughed, bitter and mean. You're one man. There's 4 of us. You really think... The shot came from the trees. Not from Ronan, not from the settlement men. A 5th person, hidden, waiting. The bullet hit the porch post inches from Mara's head. Splinters exploded. She dropped, instinct and training kicking in. Ronan was already moving, returning fire toward the shooter's position. Then everything went to hell. Marcus drew his pistol, aimed at Ronan. Mara brought her rifle up, squeezed the trigger. The recoil slammed into her shoulder. Marcus went down, screaming, clutching his leg. Thomas dove for cover. The other 2 men opened fire, and suddenly the clearing was chaos, bullets whining, snow kicking up, shouts and gunfire echoing off the mountains. Ronan took out one of the flanking men with brutal efficiency, then turned on Thomas. But the hidden shooter fired again, forcing him back behind cover. Get inside, Ronan shouted at Mara. Not without you. Another shot, closer this time. The shooter was moving, trying to get a better angle. Ronan cursed, fired blind into the trees, trying to pin them down. Thomas made a break for it, running for the tree line. Ronan let him go, bigger threats to deal with. The second flanker was circling around, trying to get behind them. Mara tracked him through the rifle's scope, remembered everything Ronan had taught her about leading a moving target. Breathe, squeeze, don't jerk. The rifle kicked. The man dropped. She'd just killed someone. The knowledge hit her like a freight train, but there was no time to process it. No time for anything except survival. The hidden shooter fired again, and this time Ronan grunted, staggered. Blood bloomed on his shoulder, bright red against the snow. Ronan! I'm fine. Get inside, now! He was still shooting, still fighting, but his left arm hung wrong. The shooter stepped out from the trees, and Mara's blood went cold. It was Sarah Mills. Sweet, tired Sarah from Coldwater Ridge, holding a rifle like she knew exactly how to use it. I'm sorry, Sarah called out, and she sounded like she meant it. But they offered money, Mara, enough to feed my kids through winter. You understand, don't you? You'd do the same for your child. Mara's hands shook on the rifle. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. They want you gone, and they're paying enough to make it worth the trip. Sarah aimed, professional, cold. Nothing personal. The rifle was coming up, finger on the trigger. In another second, Mara would be dead. Ronan threw himself in front of her. The shot hit him high in the chest, punching through coat and flesh. He went down hard, blood spreading fast across the white snow. No! Mara's scream tore from somewhere primal, somewhere that had never existed until this moment. She dropped beside him, hands going to the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Too much blood. Too fast. Sarah was reloading. Marcus was still alive, crawling toward a weapon. Thomas was shouting orders from the trees, and Ronan was dying in her arms. "Stay with me," Mara begged, pressing her hands harder against the wound. "Please, Ronan, stay with me." His eyes were unfocused, his breathing wrong. "Run," he managed. "Take the back trail. Get away. I'm not leaving you." "The baby," he coughed, blood on his lips. "Save the baby." Sarah's rifle was ready again. She was taking aim. This time she wouldn't miss. Something broke inside Mara. Something that had been holding her back, keeping her civilized, making her fit into boxes that were never meant for her. She stood. Sarah fired. The bullet went wide. Mara was already moving, faster than she'd ever moved, rage and terror and love burning through her like wildfire. She charged across the clearing, rifle forgotten, just her and her bare hands in a fury that could burn the world down. Sarah tried to fire again. Mara hit her like an avalanche, took them both down into the snow. They grappled, fought, Mara's hands finding Sarah's throat and squeezing. "You shot him," Mara snarled. "You shot my husband." Sarah's eyes were wide, terrified. She clawed at Mara's hands, trying to break free. But Mara was stronger, fueled by something beyond reason. She squeezed harder, harder, until Sarah went limp. Movement behind her. Marcus, crawling closer with a knife. Mara spun, grabbed Sarah's fallen rifle, swung it like a club. The stock connected with Marcus's skull with a sound like a melon splitting. He dropped and didn't move. The clearing went quiet except for her ragged breathing. Thomas was gone, fled into the trees. The other men were dead or unconscious. And Ronan? Mara stumbled back to him, fell to her knees in the bloody snow. He was still breathing, barely. His eyes found hers. "Told you to run," he whispered. "Shut up." Her hands were shaking as she ripped open his coat, assessed the damage. The bullet had gone through, which was good, but he was losing too much blood, going into shock. She had to move him, had to get him inside, warm, stop the bleeding. The baby kicked hard, as if reminding her that failure wasn't an option. Mara got her arms under Ronan's shoulders, started dragging him toward the cabin. He was twice her size, dead weight, and every step was agony. But she pulled inch by inch, her pregnant belly making balance harder, muscles screaming. "Stay with me," she panted. "Don't you dare die on me, Ronan Hale. Don't you dare!" She got him inside onto the bed, stripped away his bloody clothes, saw the full extent of the damage. Entry wound high on the chest, exit wound in the back. Missing the heart by inches, but the lung might be compromised. Her hands moved automatically, falling back on half-remembered lessons from her mother, from watching the settlement doctor work. Clean the wound, stop the bleeding, keep him warm. She packed the wounds with clean cloth, bound them tight. His breathing was shallow, rattling. Bad sign. But he was alive, still fighting. "I need you to keep fighting," she told him, her voice breaking. "I can't do this alone. The baby, the mountain, all of it. I need you." His hand found hers, grip weak but present. "Strong," he breathed. "Stronger than, you know." Then he slipped under, unconscious but breathing. Alive. Mara sat beside him, blood on her hands, her clothes, her face. Outside, bodies lay in the snow. She'd killed 2 people. Maybe 3, depending on whether Sarah was dead or just unconscious. She should feel something. Horror, guilt, remorse. But all she felt was cold determination. They'd come to kill her, to erase her, to make sure she disappeared like she was supposed to. She'd shown them what happened when you tried to erase a woman who'd learned to fight back. The storm that had been threatening all day finally hit around dusk. Snow came down in sheets, wind howling like wounded animals. Mara watched from the window as the clearing disappeared under fresh powder, burying the evidence of the fight. By morning, there would be nothing left but white silence. She turned back to Ronan, checked his breathing, his pulse. Still alive, still fighting, still... The baby kicked again, hard enough to hurt. Mara's hands went to her belly, feeling the life there. Their child growing despite everything. Surviving because that's what they did. They survived. Your father's tough, she whispered. Takes more than a bullet to stop him. He'll pull through. He has to. Outside, the mountain wind screamed its endless song. Inside, Mara kept watch over the man who'd given her a choice. The man she'd fought for. The man she refused to lose. She'd walked into these mountains with nothing but defiance and hope. Now she had something to protect, something worth fighting for. And anyone who tried to take it from her would learn the same lesson Thomas Webb and his men had learned. Mara Keaton didn't break. She didn't bow. She didn't disappear quietly into the night. She stood her ground and fought back. And heaven help anyone who underestimated what she was capable of when everything she loved was on the line. The first night was the worst. Ronan's fever spiked around midnight, his body fighting infection and blood loss. He thrashed in the bed, delirious, calling out names Mara didn't recognize. His skin burned under her hands as she tried to cool him with snowmelt water, changing the compresses every few minutes. "Stay with me," she whispered, over and over. A prayer to no one, a command to the universe. "Don't leave me alone up here." His wounds had stopped bleeding, but that didn't mean he was safe. Infection could kill him just as easily as the bullet had tried to. She'd cleaned them as best she could, packed them with herbs from Ronan's supplies, yarrow for clotting, comfrey for healing, things he'd taught her about in their quiet evenings by the fire. Now she could only wait and hope it was enough. The baby kicked against her ribs, restless. Mara's hand went to her belly automatically, seeking comfort in that movement. 5 months now, maybe closer to 6. The pregnancy was becoming undeniable, her body changing in ways that still surprised her. "Your father's going to be fine," she told the child. "He's too stubborn to die." Outside, the storm continued its assault. Snow piled against the windows, wind screaming through the pines. Mara had dragged the bodies inside before the worst of it hit, not out of respect, but practicality. She couldn't let them freeze to the clearing, couldn't risk animals getting to them, and then associating the cabin with easy meat. Marcus and the other man were dead, no question. Sarah was breathing, barely, unconscious with a crushed windpipe. Mara had tied her hands and feet, left her near the cold storage where the temperature would keep her stable, but not comfortable. She should probably feel something about that, about nearly killing a woman she'd known her whole life. But every time guilt tried to surface, she remembered Sarah taking aim at Ronan, remembered the cold professionalism in her voice. Nothing personal. Well, it was personal now. Around 3 a.m, Ronan's fever broke. The tension went out of his body, his breathing evened out, and when Mara pressed her hand to his forehead, his skin was cooler. Not normal, but better. She slumped in the chair beside the bed, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. When had she last slept? Before the attack, which felt like years ago, but was only hours. "Mara." His voice was barely a whisper, but it brought her head up fast. His eyes were open, fever bright but aware. "Hey." Her throat felt tight. "Welcome back." "How long was I out?" "About 12 hours. You were shot. Do you remember?" He tried to sit up, grunted in pain, fell back. "Yeah, I remember. Sarah Mills of all people. Didn't see that coming." "She's still alive, tied up in the cold storage." Ronan's eyes sharpened. "The others?"
"Dead. Marcus and one other. Thomas ran." Mara's voice was flat, factual, easier than letting emotion in. "I killed them, Ronan. I didn't hesitate, didn't freeze, just did it." "Good. No judgment, no horror, just acceptance. They came here to kill you. You defended yourself. That's survival." "It doesn't feel like survival. It feels like I'm becoming something else."
"You're becoming what you need to be to stay alive." He reached for her hand, wincing at the movement. "Up here, there's no room for guilt about that. You did what had to be done." Mara looked at their joined hands, his so much larger than hers, both stained with blood that wouldn't quite wash out. "I was so scared. When you went down, when I thought—" "I know." He squeezed her fingers gently. "But I'm still here. Takes more than a bullet to kill me. Don't joke about it."
"Who's joking? I've survived worse." His expression sobered. "But I need you to tell me everything. What happened after I went down?" She told him. About charging Sarah, about the fight, about dragging him inside and patching him up with shaking hands and no idea if it would be enough. About watching through the night, terrified that every breath would be his last. When she finished, Ronan was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You saved my life. You took a bullet for me. I'd say we're even. Not even close." His eyes held hers. "You could have run, should have run, but you stayed and fought, pregnant and outnumbered, against people who'd known you your whole life. That takes something most people don't have." "What's that?" "Backbone. Real, bone-deep courage." He paused. "I knew you were strong, Mara. But watching you stand on that porch, knowing what was coming and not backing down, that's when I knew for sure." "Knew what?" "That I'm in love with you."
The words hung in the air between them, heavy and real. Mara's breath caught. They'd been living together for months, sleeping in the same bed, building a life and a child. But neither of them had said it, hadn't dared name what was growing between them. "You picked a hell of a time to tell me that," she managed. "Figured I should say it while I'm still alive to say it." A ghost of his old smile. "In case things go sideways again." Mara leaned forward, careful not to jostle his wounds, and pressed her forehead against his. "Don't talk like that. You're not dying. I won't let you." "Bossy." "You like it?" "Yeah, I really do." His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheek. "I love you, Mara Keaton. Probably have since you walked into these mountains without looking back." "I love you too." The words felt strange in her mouth, new and terrifying and right. "Even though you're a pain in the ass who gets himself shot." He laughed, then groaned. "Don't make me laugh. Hurts like hell." "Then stop saying stupid things." They stayed like that, foreheads pressed together, breathing the same air. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, something had shifted, acknowledged, claimed, made real. After a while, Ronan's eyes started to drift closed again. "Need to sleep," he murmured. "But first, Sarah, what are you going to do with her?" Mara pulled back, her expression hardening. "I don't know yet. But she tried to kill you. That's not something I'm going to forget. Don't do anything you'll regret later. I won't regret protecting us." He studied her face, reading something there that made him nod slowly. "All right, just be smart about it. And wake me if anything happens." "Sleep. I'll keep watch." Within minutes, he was out again, his body demanding rest to heal. Mara sat beside him until she was sure his breathing was steady, then forced herself to stand. She had things to handle, whether she wanted to or not. The cold storage was just off the main room, a small space carved into the mountain itself where temperature stayed constant just above freezing. Sarah lay where Mara had left her, conscious now, eyes wide and terrified when Mara appeared in the doorway. "Please," Sarah croaked through her damaged throat. "Don't kill me. I have children. You should have thought about that before you came here." Mara's voice was ice. "Before you shot my husband. They offered money, so much money. My kids are hungry, Mara. You have to understand. I understand that you made a choice. You chose money over my life." Mara crouched down, got eye level with her. "Now you get to live with that choice." "What are you going to do to me?" Good question. Mara wasn't sure herself. Every instinct screamed to finish what she'd started, to eliminate the threat permanently. But Sarah was right about one thing. She had children. 3 of them, all under 10. "I should kill you," Mara said quietly. "Would be the smart thing. You know where we are now. You know we're vulnerable. Letting you live is a risk." "I won't tell anyone. I swear. I'll say I never found you, that the others died in the storm. Your word doesn't mean much to me right now." Sarah started crying, harsh, ugly sobs. "Please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to, but they said if I didn't, they'd make sure my family suffered. Thomas ran like a coward while his men died." Mara's voice cut through the sobbing. "So much for his promises." She stood, paced the small space. Her back ached, her feet hurt. Exhaustion pulled at every muscle. But her mind was working, calculating odds and outcomes. If she let Sarah go, the woman would probably keep her mouth shut out of self-preservation, but probably wasn't certain. If she killed her, that was one less potential threat. But it was also cold-blooded murder of someone who was no longer dangerous, and that was a line Mara wasn't sure she could cross. Not because of morality, because of what it would do to her, to the person she was becoming. "Here's what's going to happen," Mara said finally. You're going to stay here until the storm breaks. Then I'm taking you down the mountain to the first settlement I can find that isn't Coldwater Ridge, and you're going to disappear. Change your name, move your family, start over somewhere else. I can't just leave.
Yes, you can. Because if you don't, if I ever see you again or hear that you've been talking about what happened here, I will hunt you down and finish what I started. Mara leaned in close. Do you understand me, Sarah? I will protect my family at any cost. Any cost. Sarah nodded frantically, fresh tears streaming down her face. Good. Now shut up and stay quiet. My husband needs rest, and if you disturb him, we're going to have a problem.
Mara left her there, locked the cold storage door, and went back to check on Ronan. He was still sleeping, color better, breathing easier. The crisis had passed, at least for now. She built up the fire, made herself eat something even though her stomach was in knots, and finally allowed herself to sit down. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her shaky and sick. Her hands trembled as she brought a cup of tea to her lips. She'd killed 2 men. Nearly killed a woman she'd known most of her life, and she'd do it again without hesitation if it meant keeping Ronan and their baby safe. When had she become this person? This fierce, violent thing that chose survival over civilization's rules? The answer came quickly. She'd always been this person. Coldwater Ridge had tried to smooth her edges, make her acceptable, tame. But you couldn't tame what was wild by nature. You could only suppress it until circumstances demanded it resurface. The mountain hadn't made her dangerous. It had just given her permission to stop pretending she wasn't. The storm lasted 2 more days. Ronan improved steadily, his body healing with the stubborn determination he brought to everything. By the 2nd day, he was sitting up, eating solid food, arguing with Mara about whether he was ready to be out of bed. You were shot in the chest, she said, pushing him back down when he tried to stand. You're staying put. I've been shot before. I know how it feels. That's not the reassurance you think it is. He grinned despite the pain. Come on, I'm going stir-crazy in this bed. Then be crazy. You're not tearing those stitches open because you can't sit still. They'd fallen into a new rhythm, born of crisis. Mara brought him food, changed his bandages, monitored his wounds for signs of infection. He directed her through tasks he couldn't do himself, checking the snare lines, maintaining the fire, making sure their supplies were intact after the fight. At night, she slept beside him, careful not to jostle his injuries, her hand resting on his uninjured side just to feel him breathe. You're hovering, he said one evening, catching her checking his bandages for the 3rd time that hour. You're my patient. I'm allowed to hover. I'm fine, Mara. Really. Sore as hell, but fine. She sat back, looked at him. Color had returned to his face, the fever brightness gone from his eyes. He was healing, truly healing, and the relief that washed over her was so intense it almost hurt. I thought I'd lost you, she whispered. When you went down, I thought, hey. He caught her hand, pulled her closer. I'm right here, not going anywhere. You can't promise that. Not up here, not with the baby coming, not with... I can promise I'll fight like hell to stay. His voice was firm. That I won't leave you alone if I have any say in it. That good enough? It had to be. Nothing was guaranteed in this life, least of all safety. But they had each other, and right now, that was enough. On the 3rd day after the attack, the storm finally cleared. Mara woke to brilliant sunshine streaming through the windows, the kind of light that only came after massive snowfall. She got up carefully, leaving Ronan sleeping, and went to look outside. The world was transformed. Snow covered everything 3 feet deep, pristine and untouched except for animal tracks. The bodies in the clearing were completely buried, invisible under the white blanket. She'd need to deal with them soon. Couldn't leave them to rot once the thaw came. But for now, they could stay frozen and forgotten. Sarah was still in the cold storage, weak from days of limited food and water. Mara had been keeping her alive, barely, but she'd made no effort to make her comfortable. Storm's over, Mara said, opening the door, which means it's time for you to leave. Sarah struggled to sit up, her movements stiff from the cold. Where are you taking me? There's a trapper outpost about 15 miles south. You'll make it there if you move fast and don't stop. From there, you're on your own. 15 miles in this snow? I'll die. Then you should move fast. Mara tossed her a pack with minimal supplies, enough to survive the journey, not enough to be comfortable. And Sarah? Remember what I said. Disappear. Forget this place exists. Because if you don't, if you bring anyone else here,
I know, I understand. Sarah's voice was broken, defeated. I won't say anything. I just want to go home to my children.
then go, before I change my mind. Mara watched from the porch as Sarah stumbled away into the snow, heading south. She looked small and pathetic, struggling through drifts that came up to her thighs. Part of Mara felt pity. The larger part felt nothing at all. Ronan appeared in the doorway behind her, moving slowly but on his feet. You let her go. Couldn't kill her in cold blood. Not when she wasn't a threat anymore. That's mercy. More than she deserved.
Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of killing. Mara watched until Sarah disappeared into the trees. Either way, she's gone. And if she's smart, she'll stay gone. Ronan's arm came around her shoulders, carefully avoiding his bandaged chest. What about the others? The bodies?
I'll deal with them after the ground thaws. Bury them somewhere animals won't find them. She leaned into his warmth.
Is that wrong? Should I feel worse about it? You feel what you feel, no right or wrong to it. He was quiet for a moment. But for what it's worth, you did what you had to. They came here to kill you, Mara. You don't owe them guilt. Maybe he was right. Maybe survival didn't leave room for the luxury of regret. The weeks that followed were strange, peaceful on the surface, but with an undercurrent of tension that never quite faded. Ronan healed slowly, his body knitting itself back together. Mara's belly continued to grow, the baby's movements becoming stronger, more insistent. They didn't talk much about the attack. What was there to say? It had happened, they'd survived, and now they had to keep moving forward.
But some nights Mara woke from dreams of gunfire and blood, her heart racing. And some nights she caught Ronan staring at the door with that hard, watchful expression, waiting for another threat that might never come. 6 weeks after the attack, Mara woke to a sharp pain low in her belly. She lay very still, waiting to see if it would pass. The baby had been active lately, kicking and shifting position, sometimes hard enough to take her breath away. This could be normal. The pain came again, stronger. A tightening, a pressure that started in her back and wrapped around to the front. Ronan! Her voice came out steady despite the fear rising in her chest. Ronan, wake up! He was alert immediately, reading the tension in her body. What's wrong? I think... Another contraction, harder than the first two. I think the baby's coming. His face went pale. It's too early. You're only 7 months. Tell that to the baby. She tried to breathe through the pain. This is happening whether we're ready or not. Ronan was up and moving, that cold efficiency taking over. He'd been preparing for this, she knew. Had supplies ready, had studied what few medical texts he'd brought with him, had delivered enough animals to have some idea what to expect. But animals weren't human babies, and 7 months was too early, and they were alone on a mountain with no backup if something went wrong. It's going to be all right, he said, more to himself than to her. We can do this. Mara wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that strength and determination would be enough. But as another contraction hit, stronger and longer than before, fear clawed at her throat. This baby was coming too early, too fast, and there was nothing either of them could do to stop it. The labor lasted 18 hours. 18 hours of pain that rewrote Mara's understanding of what her body could endure. Contractions that felt like being torn apart from the inside. Pressure that made her think she'd split in half. Ronan stayed with her the entire time, his shoulder wound be damned. He held her hand, wiped sweat from her face, talked her through breathing when the pain got too intense. You're doing great, he said over and over. You're so strong. Just keep breathing. I can't... Another contraction cut off her words, left her gasping. Yes, you can. You're the strongest person I know. You can do this. She wanted to argue, wanted to scream that she couldn't, that this was impossible. But her body had its own agenda, pushing the baby out whether she was ready or not. Near the end, when she was exhausted beyond thought, beyond fear, just existing in a world of pain and pressure, Ronan's voice cut through the haze. I can see the head. Mara, I can see the baby. One more push, just one more. She didn't think she had it in her, but somewhere deep, she found one last reserve of strength. She pushed, felt something give, felt a rush and release, and then crying, small and furious and alive. It's a girl, Ronan said, wonder in his voice. We have a daughter. He placed the baby on Mara's chest, tiny and red and perfect despite being early. She was small, so small, fitting in Mara's hands like something breakable. But her lungs were strong, her cry indignant, and when her eyes opened briefly, they were dark and aware. "Hello," Mara whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hello, little one." The baby quieted at her voice, seemed to recognize it. Her tiny hand gripped Mara's finger with surprising strength. Ronan was working efficiently, cutting the cord, delivering the afterbirth, making sure everything was as it should be. His hands were shaking, Mara noticed. The unflappable mountain man was shaking. "Is she all right?" Mara asked. "Being early, is she—" "She's small, but she's breathing fine. Strong heartbeat. Good color." He looked up, and there were tears on his face, too. "She's a fighter, Mara. Just like her mother." They spent the next hours just watching her, this tiny person they'd made. She slept mostly, waking to cry when she was hungry. Ronan had prepared goat's milk just in case, and the baby took to it grudgingly, preferring to nurse when Mara's body finally cooperated. "What do we name her?" Ronan asked softly, running one finger along the baby's cheek. Mara had been thinking about this for months, but now that the moment was here, only one name felt right. "Ren," she said, "after your sister." Ronan went very still. "You don't have to." "I want to. She should have a name that means something, that honors someone who mattered." His throat worked as he swallowed hard. Ren would have loved that, would have loved her. Then it settled. Mara looked down at the sleeping baby. "Ren Hale, welcome to the mountain, little bird." Outside, snow began to fall again, gentle this time. Inside, the fire crackled, and three people who'd found each other against all odds settled into a new life they were building one day at a time. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing about survival ever was. But they were together, they were alive, and they were stronger than anyone who'd tried to break them had ever imagined possible. And that, Mara thought as sleep finally claimed her, was enough. The first weeks with Ren were the hardest thing Mara had ever done, and she'd survived exile, a mountain winter, and a gunfight that should have killed her. The baby was so small, fragile in a way that terrified Mara every time she picked her up. Born too early, Ren struggled with everything, nursing, staying warm, just existing outside the womb. She cried constantly, a thin wail that cut through Mara's exhaustion like a blade. "Is she supposed to cry this much?" Mara asked on the fifth night, rocking Ren while tears of frustration ran down her own face. She hadn't slept more than an hour at a time in days. Her body ached from the birth, her breasts were sore, and the constant crying was breaking something inside her. Ronan took the baby gently, held her against his chest. "She's hungry, scared, and too small to understand anything except discomfort. Give her time. What if I'm doing it wrong? What if she's sick and I can't tell?" "You're not doing it wrong. You're keeping her alive, which is more than most could do up here." He looked at Mara, saw the exhaustion, the fear. "Go sleep. 2 hours. I'll handle her." "But you're still healing." "I'm fine. You're dead on your feet." His voice was firm. "Sleep, Mara. That's an order." She was too tired to argue. She collapsed onto the bed and was unconscious within seconds. When she woke, pale morning light was streaming through the windows. She'd slept more than 2 hours, more like 6. Panic jolted through her as she sat up fast. Ronan was in the rocking chair by the fire, Ren asleep on his chest. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, but there was something peaceful in his expression as he watched the baby breathe. "You let me sleep all night," Mara said. "You needed it." He didn't look up from Ren. She finally settled around 3. Been quiet since. Mara's throat felt tight. "You should have woken me." "Why? So we could both be miserable?" He finally looked at her. "We're a team, remember? That means taking turns falling apart." It was such a simple statement, but it hit Mara hard. They were a team. Not her struggling alone while he watched, not him carrying everything while she pretended to cope. Actual partners sharing the impossible weight of keeping a premature baby alive on a mountain in winter. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Nothing to thank. She's my daughter too." Mara crossed to them, looked down at Ren's tiny sleeping face. So fragile, but still here. Still fighting. "She's got your stubborn streak," Ronan observed. "Refuses to give up, even when everything's against her." "That's from you. You're the one who survived a grizzly attack."
Pretty sure we both contributed to this particular brand of stubborn. He shifted carefully, wincing as his shoulder pulled. The bullet wound was healing, but it still pained him. Come here, sit with us. Mara settled onto his lap carefully, and he wrapped his free arm around her. The three of them sat there as the sun rose higher, a makeshift family that had no business existing, but did anyway. The weeks turned into months, and somehow, impossibly, they found their rhythm.
Ren grew stronger, slowly at first, then with more confidence. Her cries became less desperate, more communicative. She started sleeping longer stretches at night, started recognizing their faces, their voices. Her tiny hands would reach for them, grip their fingers with that surprising strength newborns had. Mara learned to function on broken sleep, learned to read Ren's different cries, learned that she was capable of more love than she'd ever imagined. Every time she looked at her daughter, this tiny person she and Ronan had made, something in her chest expanded until it hurt. She smiled at me today, Mara announced one evening, wonder in her voice. A real smile, not just gas. Ronan looked up from the rifle he was cleaning. Yeah? What'd you do? Nothing special, just talked to her while changing her, and she looked at me and smiled. Mara's own smile was enormous. Like she knows me. Like she's happy I'm here. Of course she knows you. You're her mother. Mother. The word still felt strange, too big, too important. But it was hers now, whether she felt ready for it or not. Spring arrived slowly, cautiously, like it wasn't sure it was welcome. The snow began to melt, revealing the landscape underneath, brown and muddy and dead-looking, but alive underneath, ready to grow. Mara bundled Ren up and took her outside for the first time in weeks. The baby blinked at the bright sunlight, made a face, then seemed to decide it was acceptable. Her dark eyes took in everything, the trees, the sky, the mountains rising in the distance. This is your home, Mara told her quietly. This mountain, this wilderness, it's harsh and it's dangerous and it's beautiful, just like you're going to be. Ronan joined them, moving easier now that his wounds had fully healed. The scars remained, a reminder of how close they'd come to losing everything, but he was strong again, whole. I need to go down to the trapper outpost, he said. Check if there's been any word from Coldwater Ridge, see if we need to worry about more trouble. Mara's stomach tightened. She'd been trying not to think about the settlement, about Thomas Webb escaping, about whether Sarah had kept her word or told everyone what happened. When? Tomorrow. I'll be gone 2, maybe 3 days. He looked at Ren. Will you be all right alone with her? We'll manage. Mara tried to sound confident. The thought of being alone on the mountain with a 4-month-old baby was terrifying, but she couldn't let him see that. You need to know if they're coming back. That night Mara lay awake long after Ronan fell asleep, Ren tucked between them in the bed. She listened to their breathing, Ronan's deep and steady, Ren's quick and light, and tried not to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. What if Thomas had gone back and told the council everything? What if they sent more men, better prepared this time? What if Ronan walked into a trap at the outpost? She must have dozed eventually, because she woke to Ronan already dressed, packing supplies for the trip. Be careful, she said. Always am. He bent to kiss her, then pressed his lips to Ren's forehead. Take care of our girl. She's not the one I'm worried about. His expression softened. I'll be back before you know it. And Mara? If anyone shows up while I'm gone, anyone, you take Ren and you run. Don't try to fight. Don't try to reason. Just run. Where would I go? North Trail, about 2 miles up. There's a cave I stocked with supplies. Emergency shelter. You can hold out there until I find you. He'd planned for this. For the possibility that something might happen while he was away. The knowledge should have been comforting, but it just made the fear worse. Come back to us, she said. Count on it. Then he was gone, disappearing into the trees like he always did, and Mara was alone with Ren and the mountain and her own spiraling thoughts. The first day was fine. Ren was fussy but manageable. Mara did the daily tasks, fed the animals Ronan kept, checked the snares, maintained the cabin. Normal things that kept her hands busy and her mind occupied. The second day was harder. Ren barely slept, crying for hours despite everything Mara tried. By evening, Mara was exhausted and close to tears herself. Please, she begged, rocking the baby for the 100th time. Please just sleep, just for an hour. That's all I need. Ren wailed louder, face red, fists clenched. Nothing Mara did helped. Not nursing, not rocking, not singing, not walking. The baby was inconsolable. Around midnight, Mara finally broke. She put Wren in the cradle Ronan had built, made sure she was safe, and walked outside just to escape the crying for 5 minutes. The night was cold but clear, stars scattered across the sky like someone had thrown diamonds. Mara sank down on the porch steps, put her head in her hands, and let herself cry. This was too hard. She wasn't strong enough, wasn't good enough. What kind of mother couldn't even soothe her own baby? The doubts that had been circling for months came crashing down. She'd been cast out by her own people because she was too much, too difficult, too wrong. What made her think she could do this? Raise a child in the wilderness with no help, no guidance, no safety net. Inside, Wren's crying had quieted to exhausted hiccups. Mara wiped her face, stood, went back in. The baby was still awake, staring up at the ceiling with those dark, serious eyes. When she saw Mara, she didn't cry, just watched. "I'm sorry," Mara whispered, picking her up. "I'm trying my best, but I don't always know what I'm doing." Wren made a small sound, not quite a cry. Her hand reached up, grabbed a strand of Mara's hair, held on, and something clicked into place. This baby didn't need perfect. She needed present. Needed someone who would keep showing up, keep trying, even when it was hard. Mara could do that. She'd been doing it her whole life, showing up in the face of rejection, trying despite being told she wasn't enough. She'd survived exile and a mountain winter and childbirth. She could survive this too. "We're going to figure this out together," she told Wren. "You and me. We're both learning." She sat in the rocking chair, held her daughter close, and rocked until they both finally slept. Ronan returned on the third day, looking grim. Mara knew immediately that something was wrong. "What happened?" He set down his pack, came to her. "Thomas Webb is dead." The words hung in the air. Mara's arms tightened around Wren automatically. "How?" "Froze to death about 5 miles from the settlement. They found him 2 weeks ago." Ronan's expression was hard. "Ran from the fight up here, tried to make it back in the storm. Didn't have the skills to survive it." "And the others? Did he tell anyone?" "No. Far as the settlement knows, he and his men went after you and never came back. They're assuming all of them died in the mountains." He paused. Sarah kept her word. She disappeared, took her kids, and left town the same week. No one knows where they went. Relief washed over Mara so intensely she felt dizzy. "So we're safe. They're not coming after us." "Not right now, but Mara..." His voice was serious. "The trapper told me Coldwater Ridge is struggling. Bad harvest, worse winter. People are talking about abandoning the settlement, moving to larger towns where there's more opportunity. What does that mean for us?" "It means in a few years there might not be a Coldwater Ridge to worry about. The mountain's reclaiming it, same as it reclaims everything people try to force into existence where it doesn't belong." Mara thought about the settlement that had raised her and rejected her in equal measure. Part of her felt satisfaction at the thought of it failing. But another part, smaller, quieter, felt sad for the people who genuinely tried, who'd believed they could make something work in an impossible place. "They'll survive," she said. "People always do, one way or another." "Like us." Ronan pulled her close, careful not to squish Wren between them. "How was she?" "Terrible. Amazing. Both." Mara managed a tired smile. "We figured some things out." "Good. That's good." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Missed you both." "We missed you too." That night, with Ronan home and Wren finally sleeping peacefully, Mara allowed herself to believe that maybe, possibly, they might actually be all right. Summer transformed the mountain into something almost gentle. The snow melted completely, revealing wildflowers and green grass. Game was plentiful. The days were long and warm, the nights cool but comfortable. It was the easiest season Mara had experienced since coming to the mountain, and she took full advantage. She taught Wren to love the outdoors, carrying her in a sling Ronan had made while she worked. The baby watched everything with those serious dark eyes, taking in the world around her. Birds, squirrels, the play of light through leaves, all of it fascinating. "She's going to be curious," Ronan observed one day, watching Wren try to grab a butterfly that had landed near her hand. "Going to want to explore everything." "That's terrifying. The mountain's full of things that can kill her. So we teach her. Same as my parents taught me, same as yours taught you. He tickled Wren's stomach, making her laugh. She'll learn what's dangerous and what's not. She'll grow up knowing how to survive here. Mara watched them together, her daughter and the man who'd given them both a second chance at life. You're good with her. She's easy to be good with. Doesn't judge, doesn't expect perfection, just wants food and attention and someone to make her laugh. Sounds like someone else I know. He grinned. You saying I'm high maintenance? I'm saying you're both lucky I put up with you. They fell into easy banter, the kind that came from months of living in close quarters and learning each other's rhythms. It wasn't always smooth. They still fought sometimes, still frustrated each other. But they'd figured out how to come back together, how to apologize, how to keep choosing each other even when it was hard. One evening, Mara was nursing Wren on the porch while Ronan worked on expanding the cabin. They decided they needed more space, a separate room for Wren as she got older, better storage, a larger living area. I've been thinking, Mara said, about the settlement, about all those people stuck in places that don't fit them. Ronan looked up from his work. What about them? What if there was somewhere else they could go, somewhere like this where being different wasn't a problem? You want to start a settlement? Up here. Not a settlement exactly, just a place. For people who don't fit anywhere else. The ones who are too much or too different or too whatever. She shifted Wren to her other breast. We survived. We made it work. Maybe others could too, if they had the chance. Ronan was quiet for a long moment, considering. It's a nice thought, but most people can't handle this life, Mara. They'd die up here. Some would, but some wouldn't. Some are like us, built for hard things, just waiting for permission to stop pretending otherwise. He set down his tools, came to sit beside her. You really think there are more people like us out there? I know there are. I saw them in Coldwater Ridge being crushed into shapes they were never meant to fit. Women who were too loud, too strong, too independent. Men who were too gentle, too different from what was expected. She looked at him. The world's full of people who don't fit. What if we could give some of them a place where they do? It's risky. Everything worth doing is. Ronan looked out into the mountains, at the vast wilderness they'd claimed as home. We'd need to be careful, vet people, make sure they're serious, and we'd need rules, ways to handle conflict, ways to protect ourselves and Wren. So you're considering it? I'm considering it. He took her hand. But not yet. Not until Wren's older, not until we're more established. This is a big decision, Mara. We can't rush it. I'm not talking about tomorrow. I'm talking about someday. About building something that lasts beyond just us. He squeezed her fingers gently. Then we'll talk about it more. Figure out if it's even possible. But for now, let's just focus on keeping our family safe and strong. Deal? Deal. Wren finished nursing and promptly fell asleep, milk-drunk and content. Mara looked down at her daughter, at this tiny person who'd changed everything, and felt a fierce surge of protective love. Whatever the future held, they'd face it together. That was the only certainty that mattered. The seasons turned. Summer gave way to fall, fall to winter again. Wren grew from infant to baby, developing personality and preferences. She had Ronan's stubborn streak and Mara's intensity, a combination that was equal parts delightful and exhausting. By the time she was 18 months old, she was walking, stumbling really, but determined, and getting into everything. Mara spent half her day keeping Wren from hurting herself on the various dangers around the cabin. She's fearless, Ronan said one afternoon, scooping Wren up before she could touch the hot stove for the third time. No sense of danger whatsoever. Wonder where she gets that from? Mara gave him a pointed look. Definitely from you. I'm very cautious. You fought a grizzly bear with a knife. That was different. That was survival. And touching the stove is what? Recreational? Wren giggled at their bickering like she understood it was playful. She grabbed Ronan's beard and pulled, making him wince. Gentle, he told her, carefully extracting her fist from his facial hair. We've talked about this. Dada, Wren said clearly. They both froze. It was her first real word. They'd been waiting for weeks, wondering what it would be. Did she just... Mara started. Dada, Wren said again, patting Ronan's chest proudly. His expression did something complicated, a mix of joy and disbelief and overwhelming love. Yeah, baby girl, that's right. Dada.
Mara felt tears prick her eyes. This moment, so simple, so ordinary for most families, felt momentous for them. Proof that they'd built something real, something lasting. "What about Mama?" Mara prompted. "Can you say Mama?" Ren looked at her, serious. "Dada."
Thanks, kid. Real loyal.
But Ronan was laughing, pure and happy, and Ren was giggling, and Mara found herself laughing too. This was their life now, chaotic, challenging, but filled with moments like this that made all the hard parts worth it. That winter brought another test. Supplies ran low in February, earlier than expected. A pack of wolves had been hunting in the area, taking down game before Ronan could. The traps weren't producing. The stores they'd counted on were depleting fast. "We need to ration," Ronan said, doing math in his head that Mara didn't like. "Make what we have last until I can get down to the outpost and trade for more." "How long will that take?" 4 days, maybe 5 if the weather's bad." 4 days alone with a toddler in the middle of winter, with dwindling supplies and wolves nearby. Mara's stomach nodded. "I'll be fine," she said, more to convince herself than him. "We've done this before. Not with wolves this aggressive. Not with supplies this tight." His expression was troubled. "Maybe you should come with me. We could all go." "In this cold? With Ren? That's more dangerous than staying here." He knew she was right, but he didn't like it. "If anything happens, I know the protocols. I know the emergency shelter. We'll be fine, Ronan." She put her hand on his face, made him look at her. "You taught me how to survive up here. Trust that." He left the next morning, and Mara tried not to watch the trees anxiously for his return before he'd even been gone an hour. The first 2 days were manageable. Ren was clingy, sensing Mara's tension, but otherwise fine. The cabin stayed warm, the food stretched, and no wolves appeared. On the 3rd day, everything went wrong. Mara woke to Ren burning with fever. Not just warm, hot to the touch, her skin flushed, her breathing labored. She cried weakly, not her usual lusty wail, and nothing Mara did seemed to help. Panic clawed at Mara's throat. She'd seen children die of fever back in Coldwater Ridge, seen how fast it could go from manageable to fatal. She tried everything she knew, cool compresses, willow bark tea in tiny doses, keeping Ren hydrated. But the fever climbed higher. By midday, Ren was barely conscious, her body limp and burning. Mara's hands shook as she held her daughter. This couldn't be happening. Not now, not when Ronan was gone, not when they'd survived so much already. "Please," she whispered to the universe, to fate, to anything that might be listening. "Please don't take her. She's just a baby. She hasn't even had a chance to live yet." The fever peaked around sunset. Ren's eyes rolled back, her breathing turned ragged, and Mara was certain she was about to watch her daughter die. She held Ren against her chest, rocked her, sang every song her mother had ever taught her. If these were their last moments together, she wanted Ren to know she was loved, that she'd been wanted, that her short life had mattered. "You're my miracle," Mara said through tears. "You and your father, you're everything I thought I'd never have, everything they told me I didn't deserve, and you proved them all wrong just by existing." Ren's breathing hitched, then evened out. The burning heat of her skin began to cool, just fractionally. Mara kept rocking, kept singing, barely daring to hope. By midnight, the fever had broken completely. Ren opened her eyes, looked at Mara with recognition, and made a small sound that meant she was hungry. Relief hit Mara so hard she sobbed. "Thank you. Thank you." She nursed Ren, who drank greedily, her strength already returning. Whatever had caused the fever was passing. The crisis was over. Ronan returned the next afternoon to find both of them asleep. Mara still holding Ren against her chest, refusing to put her down even in sleep. "Hey," he said softly, setting down his pack. "Everything all right?" Mara woke slowly, disoriented. When she saw him, everything that had happened crashed over her and she started crying again. "She was sick, so sick, Ronan. I was sure she was going to—" He was there immediately, arms around both of them. "But she didn't. She's fine. You kept her alive. I was so scared." "I know. But you did it. You saved her." He pressed his forehead against hers. "You're stronger than you think, Mara. You always have been." Later, after Ren was sleeping peacefully in her cradle and Ronan had restocked their supplies, they sat by the fire and talked about everything that had happened.
I keep thinking about what you said, Ronan began, about creating a place for people who don't fit. Mara looked at him, surprised. You said we needed to wait. I did. But watching you these past few months, seeing how you've adapted to this life, how you've thrived when everyone said you'd fail, it made me think. He took her hand. There are people out there like us, people who'd be better off in a place where strength isn't a flaw and difference isn't a problem. Maybe we do owe it to them to try. You're serious? I'm serious. Not right now. Ren's still too young, and we need more stability. But in a few years? Yeah, I think we could build something. A community of people who chose each other, who chose this life. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth doing is. He smiled at her, throwing his own words back. No, but we've proven we can handle hard. Maybe it's time to see what else we're capable of. Mara looked around the cabin they'd built together, literally and figuratively. At the cradle, holding their sleeping daughter. At the life they'd carved out of wilderness and determination. They'd been cast out, both of them in different ways, told they were wrong, broken, too much. But up here, in the harshest place imaginable, they'd found that being too much was exactly enough. I like that idea, she said quietly, building something that lasts, something that matters. Then we'll do it. Together. Ronan pulled her closer. Same as we do everything else. Outside, wind sang through the pines. Inside, warmth held against the cold. And three people who'd refused to be broken by the world's expectations sat together, planning a future no one else could have imagined for them. The years passed. Ren grew into a wild, fearless child who knew the mountain like others knew their own backyards. Ronan and Mara's relationship deepened into something unshakable, forged in crisis and tempered by love. And slowly, carefully, they began reaching out to others. Word spread through the trapper networks, through the small settlements struggling to survive, about a place high in the mountains where different was welcome, where strength was valued, where people could be themselves without apology. Some came and couldn't handle it, the isolation, the work, the harsh reality of mountain life. They left, and no one blamed them. But others stayed. A woman who'd been widowed and told she couldn't manage alone. A man who'd been rejected by his family for being too gentle, too different. A couple whose mixed heritage made them unwelcome anywhere else. One by one, they trickled in. And one by one, they learned what Mara and Ronan had discovered. That the places civilization rejected you were often the places you belonged all along. 5 years after Mara had walked out of Coldwater Ridge facing exile, she stood on the porch of their expanded cabin and looked out at what they'd built. A half-dozen families now lived on the mountain, each in their own space, but close enough to help in crisis. They'd established rules, shared resources, created something that looked almost like a community, but felt nothing like the restrictive, judgmental place Mara had escaped. You did it, Ronan said, coming to stand beside her. Ren was on his shoulders, chattering about something she'd seen in the woods. We did it, Mara corrected. All of us. Fair enough. He looked at the settlement they'd built. Rough, imperfect, but real. Your mother would be proud. Mine too. Mara thought about the women who'd raised them, who'd tried to help them fit into spaces that were never meant to hold them. I think they'd be surprised, but yeah, proud. Ren tugged on Ronan's hair. Mama! Bird! Mara looked where her daughter was pointing. A wren, small, brown, unassuming but tough as nails, was perched on a nearby branch, singing its heart out. That's your namesake, she told Ren. Small but fierce. Survives where bigger, showier birds can't. Like us, Ren said matter-of-factly. Yeah, baby, like us. The bird took flight, disappearing into the vast wilderness. Mara watched it go and thought about journeys, about endings that were really beginnings, about how the hardest roads sometimes led to exactly where you needed to be. She'd been told her whole life that she was too much, too tall, too strong, too loud, too different, that her very existence was an inconvenience civilization had to tolerate. But up here, in the mountains that broke weak things and honored strong ones, being too much had saved her life, had built her a family, had created a home for others who'd been rejected the same way she had. The world said people like her, like all of them, didn't fit. But maybe the world was wrong. Maybe it wasn't about fitting into spaces too small to hold you. Maybe it was about finding or building the spaces where you could finally stretch out, take up room, be everything you'd been told was too much. Ronan's arm came around her waist. What are you thinking about? About how far we've come. About how many times we could have quit and didn't. She leaned into his warmth. About how the people who cast me out thought they were getting rid of a problem, but really they just set me free. Best mistake they ever made. For us, maybe. For them? She shrugged. I heard Coldwater Ridge is completely abandoned now. People scattered to larger towns or died trying. And you feel, what about that? Mara considered the question honestly. Sad for the good people who got caught in it, but not guilty. They made their choices same as we made ours. They chose safety that stifled. We chose risk that freed us. No regrets? Not a single one. She turned to face him fully, taking in the scars they'd both collected, the hard-won strength in both their bodies and hearts. This life is brutal and hard, and sometimes I wonder if we're crazy for choosing it. But then I look at Ren, at what we've built, at who we've become, and I know this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Me too. He kissed her, soft and sure. Wherever you are is where I'm supposed to be. Ren made a disgusted sound. Yuck. Kissing. They laughed, and Ronan swung her down from his shoulders, let her run off to explore. She'd be fine. They'd taught her well, and there were always adults nearby keeping watch. You know what I think? Mara said, watching their daughter disappear into the trees with the fearlessness they'd cultivated in her. I think the world tries to convince us that fitting in is safety, that conformity equals survival, but that's backwards. How so? Because the things that make us different, the strength, the stubbornness, the refusal to shrink, those are exactly the things that help us survive when everything else falls apart. She gestured at the mountain, at their community, at everything they'd built from nothing. The world rejects people for the very qualities that would save them if they'd just let themselves be who they are. Ronan was quiet, thinking. So what you're saying is being cast out was the best thing that could have happened to you. To us, Mara corrected. And yeah, exactly. They thought they were punishing me. Really, they were freeing me to become what I was always meant to be. And what's that? She looked at him, at the mountains, at the life they'd built against impossible odds. Someone who doesn't apologize for taking up space. Someone who fights for what matters. Someone who proves that the ones society throws away are often the ones built to endure. The sun was setting, painting the snow gold and pink. Smoke rose from the chimneys of the other cabins. Somewhere, Ren was laughing. And Mara Keaton, once deemed too much for civilization to handle, stood in the center of everything she'd built and felt, for the first time in her life, like she was exactly enough. Not despite her strength, but because of it. Not in spite of her differences, but empowered by them. She'd walked into these mountains with nothing but defiance and hope, and she'd created a life that proved what the world needed to learn. The people you reject for being too much are often the ones strong enough to survive what breaks everyone else. And that strength, raw, unpolished, unapologetic, was the only thing that mattered when the world tried to erase you. Mara had refused erasure, had fought back with everything she had. And in doing so, she'd rewritten not just her own destiny, but the destinies of everyone who'd followed her to this impossible place and made it home. The mountains stood eternal around them, harsh and beautiful and unforgiving. And Mara stood with it, no longer fighting to fit into spaces too small, but claiming the vast wilderness as her own. She'd learned the truth that society tried to hide. In the harshest places, the ones the world rejects are often the only ones built strong enough to endure. And endure they would, together, unbroken, finally free.